Welcome, beautiful thinkers. I want to tell you a little about meditation for beginners. Some things to keep in mind when you're beginning, or even if you're just in the first few years of your meditation practice. Let's begin.
This is a beautiful thought.
Welcome, beautiful thinkers. I want to talk to you about meditation for beginners. I was thinking about this, and one of my friends or my clients asked me, she said she wanted to start meditation. She didn't know exactly why. Just a lot of people had told her that it would help her, and she didn't know how to do it. So I went through with her and prepared all these notes to guide her through the process, and I'd like to share them with you. So for me, seated meditation is kind of the gold standard. So there's a lot of kinds of meditation. You can do a walking meditation and mindfulness meditation, so be aware of what's going on around you. Feel the wind on your face and the seat under your butt, and there's all kinds of things and there's wonderful things. But I say, for me, seated meditation is one of the easiest ways to begin, because when you're walking around or doing a mindfulness meditation, sometimes your mind will slip and you won't even notice it. You can kind of fool yourself into thinking, yeah, I'm a good meditator. But when you sit down and you're basically alone with your thoughts, there's a lot less self-deception going on. So that's why I like it, and I think it's a good way for a lot of people to start. It doesn't have to be the only way. There's many paths to success, but this is what I prefer to do, seated meditation. The question, very important question, why do meditation? I was looking around reading some articles to send to my friend, and there's this one from El Diario, the Spanish periodical, and it's listing things like a greater capacity for memory, a greater capacity for learning, more empathy with other people, reduction of stress, a reduction of the risk of depression. It increases the capacity for attention and concentration. Now, all of these things are good, and they're actually kind of cool, especially the empathy with other people. But actually, this is kind of funny, because a lot of these, like half of them, focusing things that you don't want, like, I don't want stress. Oh, it's going to reduce my stress. Reduce your stress. It's not really that sexy, is it? Well, I don't meditate to reduce my stress. Well, occasionally I will. But the real reason is something so far beyond that. So I went looking for other articles. I found this liveanddare.com. This fellow Giovanni has been practicing meditation for 14 years. And at the time of writing the article, he had reached 7,000 hours of meditation. And he says one thing here, it often feels to me as if life is a dream. So even though I participate with joy and intensity, there is this underlying feeling that nothing can disturb me, and that I need fear nothing. All is a play. Nothing seems to be able to cause real fear or attachment. Whatever emotion rises inside of me, it only stays for long if I want it to. And it says all is a play there, which reminds me of a book I'm yet to read, Baba Muktananda's Play of Consciousness. And he also, Giovanni also lists these benefits. Seeing myself to be one with whatever I perceive around me, feeling love for all people I see, feeling a wave of joy or peace taking over my mind. So these are the kinds of things, not like reducing stress, reducing anxiety. Who cares about reducing anxiety when you can feel love for everybody you see? You feel joy or peace taking over your mind. this permanent feeling of upeksha, or imperturbability, that Giovanni describes. Now that is cool. That is sexy. Like, that's something that'll get you out of bed in the morning. And actually, I noticed that, like, in recent days, I've been putting my goals down on my list, my daily goals, and I write down the purpose, and I write down, today I'm going to do an hour or 2 hours of meditation, and I write the reason I want to do it, because I want to feel joy. I want insight. I want to explore the inner world, have a conscious connection with the divine. Now that, yes, that will get you out of bed in the morning. That's that's something beyond. Now, I was thinking about Seinfeld. A lot of people know the classic sitcom. This is an episode where Kramer comes over, bursts through Jerry's door, and he says he's going to build a loft in his apartment. And it's going to have 2 levels. It's going to be so cool. And Jerry says, all right, I bet you $20 you will not have that loft completed within the month. And Kramer says, okay, sure, let's bet. He comes back the next day and he says, bet's off. I'm not building the loft anymore. Bet's off. And Jerry keeps trying to explain to him, but Kramer, that was the bet. The bet was that you weren't going to do it. So you lost the bet. And it just won't enter into Kramer's mind. Now, the reason I tell this story is about a lack of understanding of the context, a lack of understanding of the scope, which is what happens with a lot of beginning meditators. So what happens is they'd say to me sometimes, they say, I tried so many times and it just didn't work. Or they say, I tried all these different forms and I just couldn't do it. It's just not for me. Or maybe more honestly, they say, I sat down for 10 seconds, so many thoughts came in, I couldn't stand it, and I got up and I just had to do something else. Now, if you sit down, you begin meditation, you get bombarded with thoughts, you find you're not relaxed, you get bothered, itches on your body, the guy next door with the power tools won't shut up, that is the meditation. So maybe people have this like rosy vision of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree in a forest and it's completely calm and there's nothing but birds chirping around him and landing on his nose. That's not the reality. The reality is there's all kinds of things in this world that can bother you. And it's you, when it comes down to it, it's you that's letting them bother you. And that is the meditation, to become aware of those things and to fully experience them. Well, that's a part of what's going on. And not be distracted by them. That's another point. Now, when I went to Wat Tham Krabak, I guess I had this very fixed or limited idea of what meditation could be. And with the help of my monk friend, I opened my mind up to all types of meditation techniques and a greater understanding of what meditation could look like. I kind of had this idea that you sat down and you made yourself really bored. You focused on something that was not interesting, and after a while, your mind would sort of snap into another state. It's kind of true, but it's not entirely accurate, and it wasn't very practical either. So I was leading myself astray a little with this preconception, I suppose. Now, let's say you take something you see every day, like your left index finger. Now, it's quite mundane. You know what your left index finger looks like, or you think you do. Actually, you probably haven't looked at it for a very long time. And when you do look at it, you notice there's all these hairs and follicles, perhaps some pores, little lines. You have your fingerprint and creases on it, freckles and moles, wrinkles, the ratio of the knuckles, and all little details that are all right there that you never really notice every day. Yeah, if you look at your finger with this certain even-mindedness, you might even start to emerge this feeling of love for your finger. Like, hey, that's a part of me. Hey, I like that guy. When you look at things with equanimity and curiosity, and interesting things start to happen. Likewise, we sit and focus on the breath. You might find that there's aspects of it that you haven't noticed before. So things, again, thought they were mundane. Actually, there's a deeper level to them. So do you breathe from your belly, your diaphragm, your chest? How does the breath feel in each of those areas? Notice the sensations in your nose. You can feel the breath just outside of your nose, the air coming in. And maybe it comes in directly, or maybe it comes in little eddies and willies into your nose. And maybe you can also feel the air in your nasal cavities are coming down your throat. Now, it's not exactly Saturday night entertainment, but it's not exactly boring either. We're free to explore these sensations. Another principle, I got this from the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. I'm trying to remember, I think it was David Lectern who's giving a little lecture or giving Duncan some advice about his meditation practice. Those podcasts are really great, by the way. I recommend David Lectern on Duncan Trussell in general. Not too loose, not too tight. So I'll give an example of this principle. I started meditating in Wat Tam Krabok. Every evening at 6 p.m., we'd go to the temple, they'd ring the bell, and we'd sit down for 40 minutes while the monks chanted. And after about 20 or 30 minutes, sitting there in the half lotus position, my legs would get really numb. And I didn't want to massage them or change my position or something because I thought that would be the easy way out. Or like I didn't want to appear less of a man, or I didn't want to be a failed meditator or something like this, break the trance that I was trying to establish in myself. It's kind of I wasn't gaining anything from that. I guess it was a kind of ego issue. I was being so auto-exigent or self-demanding. It wasn't necessary and it wasn't beneficial. And that's also the kind of thing that can get a lot of people frustrated. If you put so much pressure on yourself, you have such a high standard for success, in the end you might end up not doing those things. It's the problem of perfectionism. So also in that episode of the podcast, Duncan gave this example of sitting with a timer. Say the timer says 15 minutes, and after 3 minutes of sitting, he opens his eyes and he looks at the timer and he's like, no, what have I done? I've ruined this whole meditation. I have to start again. All right, it's not true. Not too tight, not too loose. Okay, you don't want to look at the timer, and you should make an effort to avoid looking at the timer. But if you do, it's not really such a big deal. So you just adapt your approach and get on with it. The next point, begin where you are. So sometimes people tell me, like I said, they're trying to sit down. After 10 seconds, they're like, nope, I can't do this. And they run away from the meditation cushion and run away from themselves. Beginning where you are. It means if you can only sit down for 10 seconds at a time, set that timer for 15 seconds and see if you can manage it. and then maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and eventually you build up. But you can't begin anywhere but where you are. You can't begin with a more peaceful mind. You can't begin with more upeksha or imperturbability. You're gonna have to start somewhere, and where you are is a good place to start. Actually, it's a wonderful place to start. My friend Link also told me that when he began meditating, he would sit on the edge of the bed and say, okay, I'm not going to get up for 5 minutes. And he wouldn't necessarily use a meditation technique. He was just experimenting in being still, just exercising that single part of it. So maybe his mind was still wandering, but at least his body was still. So, if it's hard for you to begin, or it's easy for you to begin, you must begin where you are. You cannot begin anywhere else. Now, some practical stuff about the posture. So, I prefer to sit in a half lotus position, sometimes a full lotus position. And there are other ones like that. In Thailand, they use the polite position, or there's just one where you put one foot on the other knee. But it really doesn't matter too much what position you use. The reason that positions like the half lotus, full lotus are useful is because it keeps your legs in position a bit, and that means you're less likely to move. So that's what you want, a position where you can stay, where it's not easy for you to move, where you're going to stay still more easily. And then generally want to have a stiff cushion to put under your tailbone, and that elevates your tailbone a bit so the legs can go down, and it makes it easier to sit like that. And it also helps you lengthen the spine so you can breathe more easily. And that is the idea too, when you sit in posture, to try to get your spine as long as it can, and be aware. Sometimes when I do this, my head will start going up because I'm trying to get my spine so lengthened. So be aware that your head is facing forward and not up a bit. Then you begin, and you start to focus on your breath, and you're exploring the breath as I mentioned before. So you're feeling, maybe your focus just stays on your nostrils and you're exploring the sensations that are there, or maybe you try to trace the path of your breath through your nostrils, your nasal cavity, your throat, your chest, your belly. Maybe you feel your belly expanding and contracting, focusing on that breath that gives you life. Of course, what happens to everybody when meditating, whether it happens after 2 seconds or 20 minutes, they will lose their focus. This is an expected part of the process. So don't think for a second that you're failing when this happens. This is actually the practice. So when your attention wavers, sooner or later you'll notice it. You'll become aware that you're not being aware, and you'll bring your attention back. That's all it takes. Some people will say, well, that's difficult. Okay, in a sense, it's difficult. Like when you first start, you might not be good about it. You might lose your attention, put your attention somewhere else very quickly. And when you do notice, you just bring it back. So there's nothing difficult about that, is there? There's no real standard of success or failure. If you lose your attention, you just bring it back. Another point that's very important. So sometimes I'll get up and maybe I've slept in a bit. And I'm like, I wanted to do an hour or half an hour meditation today. And now it's so late. I feel like I don't have time. Doing it imperfectly. Actually, this applies to almost any habit. Doing it imperfectly is better than not. So if you don't have time for the full hour or half hour, if you only have time for 5 minutes, it's still good to do 5 minutes. Or it's like maybe similar thing like with people who go to the gym. If they feel a little sick one day, it's still good to go to the gym and just do some stretches to maintain the habit. Just as it is with meditation, even if you just do it for a minute or 5 minutes, doing it imperfectly, better than not doing it at all. So actually it's cool to be imperfect. I'm saying that as an imperfect human. Thank you for everybody out there being imperfect and still managing to improve your lives and implement new habits and explore the depths of joy and gratitude and happiness and satisfaction and all of these wonderful things that come out, the feeling of empathy with other people, of loving acceptance, and also insight. All of these things can happen to you when you practice meditation consistently. Thank you for listening to my little primer of meditation, and thank you for being cool. I'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day.
A beautiful thought.
Thank you for listening. So it is something that comes up quite often when I'm doing cognitive behavioral sessions with somebody. They start asking me about meditation and how it can be used to create a more fulfilling life, a more fulfilling lifestyle. So if you're curious about cognitive behavioral sessions and maybe a little bit of coaching, of meditation, a few tips and tricks and principles, more importantly, you can head over to beautifulpodcast.com. You look at the top in the header, it says CBT sessions, and you can look at my calendar and hang out with me for an hour, and we'll talk and get to understand each other and come up with an action plan so you can move towards greater fulfillment and contentment in your life. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.